can't handle the truth.
All the armchair generals on social media miss the big picture in the Mideast because they don't understand economics. Donald Trump has made the United States energy independent. Now he is out to break the City of London's centuries-old control of the price of energy, and with it, their power over the world's economy, including our own, by force if necessary. Here's what he posted Saturday night on Truth Social. If Iran doesn't fully open without threat the Strait of Hormuz within 48 hours from this exact point in time, the United States of America will hit and obliterate their various power plants, starting with the biggest one first. That put all the key players on the line. The delusional Iranian government and the 23 nations who have pledged to defend the Strait of Hormuz now have a deadline. The 23 have started to move assets into the region. The Iranians had to come to the table. The media, of course, went hysterical. The Financial Times relied on the International Crisis Group, a Soros-funded globalist think tank, to declare that the world is headed to, quote, catastrophic disaster as the result of the president's tweet. This morning, he announced that Iran was at the table and productively negotiated. He extended the deadline by 5 days. The press are all mouthpieces for London and Wall Street, and the City of London is in the deepest crisis in its history as the result of the president's actions. Today, we'll first take up 3 stories. First, what's happening to the City of London domestically and strategically. Second, how London has prevented Middle East peace and economic development until now. And third, how Trump is following in the footsteps of Franklin Delano Roosevelt by ending London's control of the Middle East. Now, while everyone was debating Trump's tweet, the City of London declared an economic emergency. Prime Minister Keir Starmer has called an emergency cabinet meeting with Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey to address soaring energy costs, which are hitting British households very, very hard. Government borrowing costs surged past 5% Friday for the first time since July 2008. Remember that date, the Lehman Brothers crash? That was the beginning of the last great financial crisis hitting. One cabinet source told GB News there is, quote, deep gloom in both the Treasury and Number 10. The modern British Empire can't survive without the U.S. military enforcing its strategic goals, and it can't survive without Gulf oil states parking their wealth in London. But those states are moving their money to Trump's United States and have joined his Board of Peace to end the region's permanent religious warfare. Gulf governments have pledged $4 trillion in investment to the U.S. since Trump returned to office. The UAE alone reaffirmed its $1.4 trillion commitment this week. And they're all in the Board of Peace, aiming to economically develop the Middle East along with nuclear and other modern energy resources. Starmer's paralysis in this circumstance is so obvious that it became a global joke on Saturday night. Saturday Night Live London mocked it. Trump posted this clip to his Truth Social.
Oh, golly. Well, what if Donald shouts at me? What do I say, Lammy?
Just be yourself, Prime Minister. Yourself is who everyone likes.
Hello?
Oh, sod that scary, scary, wonderful president. Why is he so bloomin' difficult to talk to?
Sir, just be honest and tell him we can't send any more ships to the Strait of Hormuz.
Oh, crumbs. I just hate conflict so much.
Are you referring to the war or this phone call?
Isn't there a way I can not do both? I just want to keep him happy, Lammy. You don't understand him like I do. I can change him.
I don't think the feeling's mutual. He can't stop insulting you. He called you a coward.
I'm out of my depth here, Lammy. How did Liz Truss make this job look so easy?
Look, we were worried you'd lose your nerve, so we've taken steps to help you gain unfounded confidence. Mr. Prime Minister, meet your Gen Z advisor at Lou Hoopy.
What's up, Stormzy? Bow!
At Lou Hoopy is the most qualified person we have. He is the only person under 23 who voted Labour and would so again in the next election.
You're not voting for the Green Party?
Nah, my dad works in oil. No cap, Stormzy. I love you, and I do hearts this way, with my thumb.
Thank you, Lil Hoopy. I love you too.
Dirk here is trying to set boundaries with the president while preserving their special relationship.
Now, see, facts. So you're looking for more of a special situationship. I've got you covered. I'm an expert in messy drama. I've been in 3 throuples, and I'm currently gay. First thing you gotta do, you gotta forget the phone call these days. It's all about the voice note.
I'll try anything. I'll do anything, except take a stand.
Europe is also suddenly confronting the consequences of 2 catastrophic British imperial projects, green energy and Ukraine. Here's Belgium's Prime Minister Bart de Wever breaking openly with the entire EU last week. Quote, "We must normalize relations with Russia and regain access to cheap energy. That is common sense. In private, European leaders agree with me, but no one dares to say it out loud." And on Ukraine, given that we are unable to pressure Putin by sending weapons to Ukraine and cannot suffocate his economy without U.S. support, only one method remains: making a deal. This is the entire post-war imperial architecture cracking at the seams simultaneously because of decisions made in Washington over the past 60 days. Which takes us next to the transformation nobody in the media is covering. Now, here is what the armchair generals are missing entirely. Iran did not close the strait with a naval blockade. It fired a handful of drones. And that was enough, because the real choke point is not the strait. The real choke point is the City of London's insurance and oil pricing monopoly. Lloyd's of London has operated for 337 years and sits at the apex of the world's war risk marine insurance market. Without that insurance, the ships don't move. In every prior crisis, the 8-year Iran-Iraq tanker war, the 1990 Gulf War, the 2012 standoff when Iran threatened to close the strait, Lloyd's never canceled war risk coverage. They raised premiums, but the ships kept moving. On March 2nd, for the first time in 337 years, they canceled. Strait traffic collapsed 81% in a week. And Chatham House, the City of London's own imperial foreign policy think tank, tells us why. They say that the continuing Iran war shows the Gulf states that they, quote, should no longer rely on America for security guarantees. The deliberate attacks on the Gulf states by Iran and the closure of the Strait of Hormuz by the City of London's insurers are meant to drive the Gulf states back towards London's orbit. They're also an obvious economic attack on the president's economic progress here at home ahead of the critical midterm elections. And London has tried to destroy Trump's candidacies at every turn, starting with MI6 agent Christopher Steele and Russiagate. Until recently, the British also controlled world energy geography. Take the Strait of Hormuz as an example. It is 39 kilometers wide at its narrowest. Iran controls the north. The southern shipping lanes run through the territorial waters of Oman. Oman is the living residue of the British Empire. In 1970, MI6 engineered the installation of its Sultan. Today, GCHQ runs 3 signals intelligence bases in Oman: timpani, guitar, clarinet, intercepting everything that passes through Hormuz. British intelligence listens to every ship that moves to the world's most critical energy choke point from bases in the country whose government it installed. And as we all learned recently, the announced but very invisible new Iranian leader has over 130 million in London real estate. That's typical of the old order. Now, this has happened before. On February 14th, 1945, Franklin Roosevelt stopped in the Great Bitter Lake in the Suez Canal and received King Ibn bin Saud of Saudi Arabia aboard the USS Quincy. He did it secretly, without telling Churchill. After Roosevelt told Congress these exact words. I learned more about the whole problem of Arabia, the Muslims, and the Jewish problem in 5 minutes by talking with Ibn Saud than I could have learned in exchange of 2 or 3 dozen letters. Churchill was furious. Roosevelt had promised him the U.S. would not interfere in the British sphere of influence and broke that promise deliberately. His translator, Colonel Edie, recorded that Churchill, quote, burned up the wires to all his diplomats in the area, demanding appointments with the Arab monarchs the moment Roosevelt had left. Churchill rushed to meet Ibn Saud himself. The contrast was devastating. Ibn Saud told Edie, Churchill speaks deviously, evades understanding, changes the subject to avoid commitment. The president seeks understanding. His effort is to make the two minds meet. I have never met the equal of the president in character, wisdom, and gentility. Churchill's meeting failed, and the U.S.-Saudi relationship has flourished ever since. Ibn Saud's discussion of Roosevelt is very similar to how the Gulf states now describe Donald Trump. So let's see what we have here. Roosevelt started to cut out the imperial middleman and world energy production in 1945. By 1971, London had inserted itself back in. America became the military muscle behind a resource looting system whose profits ran through the City of London and Wall Street. You cannot have a genuine American economic revolution or real sovereignty if someone else is setting the price of energy. The Treasury Department has physically increased the supply of oil and gas worldwide in the last 2 weeks, unsanctioning Russian oil, unsanctioning certain Iranian oil, getting worldwide agreements to release reserves. Not only that, Iran is allowing tankers through the strait for India, China, and Japan, Iran's main customers. So the strait is not physically closed, oil supplies are safe, but the strait is financially closed by the City of London and its desperate effort to remain alive as a world power. We don't know the outcome because it is a war, and the Psy war is running at a higher level than I've ever seen it. But we can know the principles the president is fighting for, and those principles make this a just war, which we have to win. This has been your Monday Update. Thanks for listening.
שלוש, יש פה מלא נפילות, איציק. כן, אני מסתכל. יאללה, אנחנו למטרה הבאה.
עוד שניים מתארגנים. קיבלתי. תתמקחו, אנחנו נעשה עוד כניסה ואז את תגיע. אלפא.
מיד, תגיע. אלפא. כל הכבוד.
הוטל. 10 שניות.
בסדר, זה משאית מחבלים בוודאות
משאית מחבלים.
גויו.
محطة الأمانة مفرع مخيم رشدي.
Hi, I'm Admiral Brad Cooper, Commander of U.S. Central Command, here with my 5th update on Operation Epic Fury. We're in the 4th week of the campaign and remain on plan or ahead of plan in achieving very clear military objectives for eliminating Iran's ability to project power in meaningful ways outside its borders. U.S. forces have struck more than 10,000 military targets. In fact, we hit the 10,000th Iranian target just hours ago. And if you combine what we've accomplished with the success of our Israeli ally, together we have struck thousands more, clearly demonstrating that we're stronger together. Our precision strikes have overwhelmed Iranian air defenses, and our combat flights over Iran are having tangible effects. Here are a few examples. For decades, Iranian warships have roamed regional waters, threatening and harassing global shipping. But those days are over because we've now destroyed 92% of the Iranian Navy's largest vessels. They are not sailing, and my operational assessment is that they've now lost the ability to meaningfully project naval power and influence around the region and around the world. As we've highlighted previously, Iran's drone and missile launch rates are down by more than 90%, meaning their ability to attack American forces and regional neighbors is drastically reduced. And not only have we significantly degraded Iran's naval, drone, and missile capabilities, we've also removed the regime's ability to rebuild them. Before Operation Epic Fury, Iran had large-scale manufacturing capacities to not only build naval vessels, missiles, and attack drones, but also to advance and proliferate these technologies to regional and global bad actors. Today, we've damaged or destroyed over 2/3 of Iran's missile, drone, and naval production facilities and shipyards, and we're not done yet. We are on a path to completely eliminate Iran's wider military manufacturing apparatus, which is why my operational assessment continues to be Iran's combat capability is declining as U.S. combat capability continues to increase. U.S. forces maintain air superiority over Iran's skies, having now flown over 10,000 combat flights. As I mentioned in my last update, refueling tankers are extending our reach, and fighters and bombers are delivering precise strikes against our primary objectives. Let me highlight our B-52 bomber force, which is executing a high volume of strikes into Iran and demonstrating our unmatched dominance in the air. Now, in their 8th decade of flight, our B-52 bombers are executing strikes into Iran with up to 70,000 pounds of munitions on each mission. Our B-52 pilots and aircrew embody the courage and resilience of the more than 50,000 American sons and daughters serving in uniform during this operation. There is no adversary too determined, no mission too difficult, and no task too great for our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, Guardians, and Coast Guardsmen. I just could not be prouder of our troops, and I know the American people share that same pride. Thanks so much. Godspeed.
Why the A-10 Thunderbolt is suited for the Strait of Hormuz. While the U.S. Air Force has been trying to retire the aging A-10 for years to free up budget for fifth-generation stealth fighters like the F-35. However, the unique geography and asymmetric threats of the Strait of Hormuz have made the Warthog temporarily indispensable. They fly low and can slow down the flight speed. Modern jets often fly too fast and high to effectively track small, agile boats swarming in a tight littoral coastal environment. The A-10 is built to fly close to the surface, allowing pilots to visually identify and engage small, erratic targets. One of the main advantages is that it also has massive loiter time. The A-10 can circle above the strait for hours. This persistent overwatch allows them to wait patiently for IRGC boats to emerge from hidden coastal inlets before striking. As we also know, the strait is heavily defended by man-portable air defense systems and small arms fire. To counter small firearms, the A-10's titanium bathtub cockpit armor and redundant flight systems allow it to absorb heavy anti-aircraft fire and keep flying, a risk the military is less willing to take with the F-35 $100 million stealth fighter jet. But the A-10s are not operating in alone. They are currently acting as part of a layered tactical network, working directly alongside Apache attack helicopters, which are also hunting boats and intercepting one-way attack drones in the Strait of Hormuz. So, why exactly is the military keeping the A-10 in the fight? It all comes down to the rugged engineering behind its airframe. But to see why this plane refuses to die, we first have to crack it open and understand how it actually works. The A-10 is a ground attack aircraft primarily constructed from aluminum alloys. Its airframe consists of multiple independent beams that run along the length of the fuselage and wings, providing exceptional structural integrity. Since these aircraft operate at very low altitudes to support ground troops, they often face intense enemy fire. To withstand such conditions, the A-10 is designed with a rugged airframe capable of absorbing significant battle damage. It features extensive armor protection around the cockpit, and the glass is also bulletproof and other critical components, making it exceptionally durable for close air support missions. In fact, the A-10's cockpit is encased in titanium armor, also called the bathtub, weighing approximately 1,200 pounds, which translates 540 kilograms, allowing it to withstand heavy impacts and continue flying even in hostile environments. Let's start from the front. This aircraft, along with its entire frame, was built specifically to accommodate this massive gun. Because of that, the landing gear had to be pushed to the sides. To give you an idea of its scale, let's compare it to a person. You can see just how huge it is. From this top angle, you'll notice that the gun is slightly off-center. This is named as the GAU-8 Avenger, a 30mm cannon, and it's actually angled downward by a few degrees. The GAU-8 Avenger uses a 7-barrel Gatling design where barrels rotate around a central axis. Each barrel fires sequentially, allowing rapid cooling between shots and reducing wear. The rotation is powered by dual hydraulic motors producing 77 horsepower, which spin the barrels at high speeds, achieving a rate of fire of 3,900 rounds per minute, down from an initial 4,200 revolutions per minute to extend barrel life. It also employs a double-ended, linkless feed system that cycles spent casings back into the drum magazine instead of ejecting them. This prevents imbalances in the aircraft's center of gravity and avoids debris ingestion by engines. The drum holds up to 1,174 rounds, typically loaded with 1,150, and requires a specialized reloading, a process that can take hours due to the system's complexity. The gun generates 10,045 kilonewton of recoil, more than one of the A-10's TF-34 engines, which produces 9,065 pounds each. To counteract this, the gun is mounted off-center, slightly to the port side. This design balances recoil forces, preventing pitch or yaw deviations during firing. The reason for the high recoil is because of the size of these rounds. For reference, this is a standard bullet. Right next to it is a 50 caliber round. Finally, this is the massive 30mm bullet used in the GAU-8 Avenger. To put things into perspective, let's compare it to the size of a human hand, and it is enormous. To help you understand better, this is a cross-section of an armor-piercing incendiary round made with a depleted uranium penetrator. Just below that is the jacket, followed by a tracer round, propellant charge, and finally the electric primer. When fired, it can pass through 38mm of steel when fired from a range of 1,000 meters. Moving back to the front, the two objects positioned just above the gun and the forward radar warning receiver. To create a 360-degree protection, these are also fitted on the wings on each side and finally on the tip of the tail. They are essential for a ground attack jet, as heat-seeking missiles always pose a potential threat. When a target is locked by radar and illuminated by a continuous wave or pulse Doppler signal, used for missiles with a semi-active radar seeker, these radar warning receivers pick it up. The HUD and display unit alert the pilot and activate countermeasures such as flares to confuse incoming missiles, helping to prevent a fatal crash. Even for civilians, there are countless bad actors targeting our computers, which is why we need a defense mechanism. Just like the A-10 Thunderbolt's multi-targeting radar. Step over here. If you open this hatch, you'll find a ladder, which makes this one of the few military jets with a built-in way to climb straight into the cockpit. Once inside, you'll notice everything's we clearly labeled with most of its parts, so feel free to take your time exploring before we dive into learning how to fire the GAU-8 Avenger cannon. Right in front of you are the center stick controls. The red button on top is the weapon release, and just below that, you'll find the trigger for the gun. To use the GAU-8, first flip the red gun safety switch to Gun Pack ARM. This activates both the cannon and the precision attack control system. Once you've locked onto a target, line up the upper dot of the reticle and hold down the first stage trigger on the target as shown here. When you're within a mile of the target, pull the trigger all the way. This unleashes a barrage of rounds powerful enough to take out tanks or lightly armored vehicles. Now that you've got the hang of the gun, let's talk about dropping bombs in case you come across one of these. For a bombing run, the pilot arcs into a semicircular dive toward the target but releases the bomb halfway through the maneuver. Thanks to physics, the bomb inherits the plane's forward speed at that moment, meaning it keeps flying ahead at the same velocity. With GPS guidance, it then glides precisely to its target. Inside the cockpit, let's take a look at the process of dropping gravity bombs. This is the velocity vector. It indicates the direction your aircraft is currently moving. Just below it is the computer-calculated impact point. The large line extending outward represents the projected weapon fall line. Here you can see the weapon selection symbology, and just below it, the selected weapon. In this case, the Mark 82 bomb. Now, the most important part to ensure accuracy, align the computer-calculated impact point with the velocity vector of the aircraft, while also making sure the projected weapon straight line with the target. This is what the impact fall line would look like. Keep in mind that these Mark 82 bombs are often equipped with a GPS guidance kit for greater precision. When the targeting symbology aligns over the target, the pilot presses the top release button on the control stick. From that moment, physics, gravity, and the GPS bomb kit take over, guiding it toward its mark. Let's consider this scenario, supporting ground troops who are under heavy fire and pinned down by armored tanks and heavy artillery bombardment. It all begins with reconnaissance or troops that needed fire support. They scan the battlefield, pinpointing enemy positions and relaying vital intelligence with precise coordinates. Once the plan is in place, the A-10s take off and head toward the target area. Flying at low altitudes, they use terrain features for cover, avoiding enemy radar detection. Throughout the approach, they maintain constant communication with ground units, receiving real-time updates and adjusting their tactics as needed. As they close in, the A-10s unleash their iconic GAU-8 Avenger cannons, tearing through armored vehicles and artillery positions. But they need to change their strategy against heavily armored targets. They can use guided munitions or Hellfire missiles for moving targets, delivering devastating precision against enemy tanks. Smoke rises from the battlefield as the Thunderbolts rain down their firepower. But their mission doesn't end with the initial strike. The A-10s remain on station, providing critical close air support. As ground troops push forward, the pilots stay ready to respond instantly to enemy resistance and clear the path ahead. The A-10's engines are mounted high on the fuselage, a design choice that helps reduce the risk of damage from foreign objects when flying in partially damaged airports. This is how it works. The fan rotor draws in ambient air, which undergoes powerful compression in both the low-pressure and high-pressure compressors. Subsequently, the air enters the combustor, where fuel injection occurs. This process generates a continuous combustion of fuel and air, reaching temperatures about 1,000 degrees Celsius. The resultant heat causes the gas to expand, leading it to escape from the combustor with high energy, flowing through both the high and low pressure turbines. As a consequence, the turbine blades rotate. The energy liberated by this process drives both the compressor and the fan. Finally, the remaining exhaust gases exit through the nozzle, generating thrust. Unlike traditional jet engines, the TF-34G100 produces relatively cooler and slower-moving exhaust, reducing its heat signature and making the A-10 harder to detect with infrared sensors. All the power generated by the engine needs fuel, and they comes from these 4 compartmentalized self-sealing tanks. Here you'll find the forward fuel tank 1 and the rear fuel tank number 2. Moving to the sides, you'll see 2 additional wing fuel tanks. Opening this lid reveals the single-point refueling section. Through this refueling point, you can pump in up to 11,000 pounds of aircraft fuel. To put that into perspective, that's enough to fill about 20 school buses, assuming they use the same fuel type and each has an 80-gallon tank. These are the flaps on the A-10. When extended, they increase the wing's surface area and curvature, allowing the aircraft to maintain controlled flight during takeoff, landing, and slow-speed maneuvers. Here are the slats. These help manage airflow over the wings, especially at high angles of attack, ensuring the aircraft remains stable and controllable even during sharp turns or aggressive maneuvers. The rudder mounted on the vertical stabilizer at the tail is the A-10's primary means of controlling yaw, the side-to-side movement of the aircraft's nose. Finally, the air brakes are one of the A-10's most distinctive features. These large panels extend from the fuselage just behind the wings, creating significant drag. They allow the A-10 to transition from high-speed flight to low-speed maneuvering without compromising stability, making them an indispensable tool for close air support missions. In case the military needs you, let's go over how to start this plane. First, set the inverter to standby, then turn on the battery power. Next, start the APU or auxiliary power unit. Wait for the APU gauge to reach 100%. Now start the left engine by setting the throttle to the idle position. Once the left engine is running smoothly, start the right engine. After both engines are up and running, turn off the APU. Finally, set all displays to either day or night mode depending on your needs. And just like that, full throttle and raising the control unit and you're ready to go.
والله رجع والسلام يا الله وما بركن والسلام مرة الرابعة رجع مرة الرابعة رجع نفس الضرب نفس الطيارة ضرب
لا إله إلا الله يا علي يا علي يا علي تعال تعال عبود
کجا چه دنیا خرابینه بابا.
Fox News alert, the Iranian regime's losing leverage fast as we continue to carry out thousands of sorties over enemy airspace. The crew on the USS Abe Lincoln has been launching jets day and night. The flight deck covers 4.5 acres. Pilots landing on it say it's like landing on a moving postage stamp. The Iranians hate Honest Abe. They lobbed 100 missiles at the Lincoln this week, and we knocked down every single one. We have full control of the skies, and our Thunderbolt Warthogs are wreaking havoc, pulverizing Iranian naval assets. The world's most dominant air superiority fighters also taking hearts, the F-22 Raptor. And we just got a rare Raptor shot. Here she is preparing for another night of combat. The Raptor flies where it wants and strikes what it wants. So far, we haven't missed much. Here's CENTCOM Commander Admiral Brad Cooper.
U.S. forces have struck more than 10,000 military targets. In fact, we hit the 10,000th Iranian target just hours ago. Our precision strikes have overwhelmed Iranian air defenses, and our combat flights over Iran are having tangible effects. We've now destroyed 92% of the Iranian Navy's largest vessels.
The most destructive and precise bombers in history continue to lift off from air bases in England. More B-2s flew out today, headed to the fight.
Let me highlight our B-52 bomber force, which is executing a high volume of strikes into Iran and demonstrating our unmatched dominance in the air. Now in their 8th decade of flight, our B-52 bombers are executing strikes into Iran with up to 70,000 pounds of munitions on each mission. Our B-52 pilots and aircrew embody the courage and resilience of the more than 50,000 American sons and daughters serving in uniform during this operation.
One of the core objectives of Operation Epic Fury is not only disarming Iran, but preventing them from rearming. And we're almost there.
Before Operation Epic Fury, Iran had large-scale manufacturing capacities to not only build naval vessels, missiles, and attack drones, but also to advance and proliferate these technologies to regional and global bad actors. Today, we've damaged or destroyed over 2/3 of Iran's missile, drone, and naval production facilities and shipyards, and we're not done yet.
Overnight, our Israeli allies struck 2 naval cruise missile production facilities. The IDF also struck a key Russian-Iranian weapons smuggling route in the Caspian Sea, which is going to set the Iranians back big and take a piece out of the Kremlin. For the first part of the war, the Iranians didn't fire a single ballistic missile at their neighbors, the UAE. They're running out of firepower, or they're trying to conserve it. Either way, the mullahs need a way out of this.
That's why you're beginning to see the regime look for an exit ramp. They recognize they are being crushed, their ability to attack American and ally forces, as well as their ability to defend their own territory is dwindling literally hour by hour.
It's been 48 hours of negotiations, and the clock's ticking. The 82nd Airborne Division's already en route to the Middle East as we speak. Portions of the elite paratrooper unit have spent the past days getting their reps in. Infiltrate, surveil, fight, and resupply, all under the cloak of darkness. The men have cutting-edge gear, some of the most advanced drones ever assembled. One source says, kind of feels like cheating. Another says, these switchblades are artillery on easy mode. And the commander-in-chief just has to give the order.
President Trump does not bluff, and he is prepared to unleash hell. Iran should not miscalculate again. Their last miscalculation cost them their senior leadership, their Navy, their Air Force, and their air defense system. Any violence beyond this point will be because the Iranian regime refused to understand they have already been defeated and refused to come to a deal.
A White House advisor says the president's negotiating with two hands. Quote, Trump has a hand open for a deal, and the other's a fist, waiting to punch you in the effing face. 47 could be eyeing a knockout. Iran's crown jewel, Karg Island. The Republican Guard's been preparing for battle, laying mines, booby trapping, loading up on stingers. But retired top brass says our military is ready to shock and seize the terrain, by air, by sea. We don't know if it's going to happen, but if it does happen, the Iranians won't know it's coming. The incoming USS Tripoli could be the platform for an air assault. The warship's currently carrying V-22 Ospreys, which are designed to take off and land vertically. Basically a fighter jet that can land like a helicopter, but fly at jet-like speeds, and capable of bringing Marine forces anywhere. Trump's been eyeing the island for 40 years. He told The Guardian in '88 this, one bullet shot at one of our men or ships, and I'd do a number on Karg Island. I'd go in and take it. Now, if we take Karg, that's over 90% of Iran's crude exports. The island's geography is irreplaceable. The rest of their coastline's shallow water, so tankers can't dock. The regime makes $300 million a day shipping oil off that island. But if America takes it, we control the faucet and the regime. 90 targets on Karg Island have already been hit, and we've also been softening up the coastline with strikes on Iranian ports, bases, and hitting their mobile missile launchers. That's fertile ground for the Marines to storm and secure the strait. 30 of our allies have agreed to sail their navies towards Hormuz, signaling this could be the final act, winning the peace. India has already deployed over half a dozen of their warships to the Gulf of Oman to escort their tankers, and 2 of them passed through the strait this week. Modi says he doesn't need Iran's permission to sail through, says it's international waters. And remember how the Iranians just gave Trump a present? Sources say the gift was allowing the safe passage of fuel tankers through the strait. To agree, that has been happening, just not tankers that are members of the American alliance. Mr. Wonderful, he's saying, stop being a panicking.
We've got about 45 days worth of oil floating on the water right now. In order to really have a very difficult situation stateside, you'd need 90 days at above $90. We're only 1 month. And so the minute Hormuz is open, oil prices will drop to mid-70s, as they were prior to the conflict. The market will adjust immediately. It'll take about 2 weeks at the pump for it to drop. And that's what the market thinks is going to happen.
The strait's been closed for 25 days, and Brent crude still closed at under $100 a barrel. Obama had oil over $100 a barrel for 3.5 years. Biden had it over 100 for 5 months. It peaked at $140, and Democrats did nothing, blamed it on Russia. Oil closed over 100 under Trump for only 6 days. 6. The Dow closed up 300 points today, and money managers are bullish.
It's the first time in 60 years you've heard Bahrain, UAE, Saudi Arabia, Qatar all sing from the same song sheet, saying status quo doesn't work. That's really good for everybody because that's a lot more trade into Asia. That's the hub. UAE is the hub of trade for that whole region. That'll be a great outcome for investors like me. Hormuz will be open in perpetuity. We've got 22 nations talking about supporting that financially. That's just like the Suez or Panama Canal. Great for the region. It's a game changer in the sense that all of a sudden you have stability in the fastest growing part of the earth. It's very, very bullish for world markets.
The Arabs bought $300 billion of American AI. Can't have Iranian missiles flying over our best customers. The Saudis agreed to pump more to take the bite out of Trump's tariffs, and now they're working on a new land and sea route to get their oil out of the Strait through the UAE and into the Indian Ocean. Iran looks like this is their last gasp, but some people would rather America lose the war because they hate Trump. Even the New York Times says, quote, the war is going better than you think. Desert Storm was considered a major military success, and we lost 75 aircraft. 3 weeks into Epic Fury, we haven't lost a single manned plane over Iran, not one. When we invaded Panama, 23 Americans were killed. Here, so far, we've had 13 casualties. More Americans died in training exercises last year than have died in this mission. In 2003, we launched a decapitation strike against Saddam and his lieutenants. We missed. Here, we smoked the Ayatollah and his whole team in the first 40 seconds. That war in Iraq, Saddam never had WMDs. Here in Iran, the Iranians, we know, have almost 1,000 pounds of uranium. And they told us it's enough to build 11 nukes. So far, this is the cleanest, most surgical, and one-sided operation in American military history. Now, anything could happen. War is hell. It's unpredictable. But people in the know in Washington think we're about to close it out with a pretty big blow.
We have the greatest, most powerful military fighting force ever conceived in the history of planet Earth. It's an amazing power that we have, and we wield it for good. I think we're wrapping up Operation Epic Fury. That's what I think. I think it will be done in short order, and that'll be right on schedule.
We started getting intel from the Israelis and then followed by eyewitnesses on the streets of Tehran saying that the checkpoints are now empty, most of them. The Basij members have gone into hiding. Let's go to the first video.
نگاه کنید ایسپازیسی خالیه، هیچ سرکوبگری نیست. این قوای سرکوب از ترس پهپاد و موشک رفتن تو سوراخ موشاشون قایم شدن تا از هوا بهشون نزنن. اینا که با اسلحه وایساده بودن جلوی مردم بیگناه و همه رو میکشتن، حالا مثل موش ترسیدن و در رفتن. دیگه چیزی نمونده که ایران رو آزاد کنیم.
Yep, it's basically almost over, especially after what President Trump did yesterday when he was going around saying, yeah, we're talking to someone in Iran, and everyone was like, who's he talking to? Even people inside the regime were started pointing at each other and blaming each other. And then the IRGC leadership, at this point, the IRGC leadership is a faceless leadership because nobody actually knows who's calling the shots. So it's a group of people at the top who have recently been promoted by themselves, and they're calling the shots. So they decided, well, we're going to have to take control of these so-called talks. And these are surrender talks, basically. But the Islamic Republic are refusing to surrender. So they've sent a whole list of demands, which we mentioned last night. One of them was the Americans should abandon the Middle East, leave the bases. I'm like, yeah, that's not going to happen, darling. You can try. They also wanted reparations like Black Lives Matter. Also a terrible idea.
Yesterday, President Trump made clear that the discussions with Iran are real. And asked why he trusted the process, he dropped this bombshell.
Because they're going to make a deal. They're going to make a deal. They did something yesterday that was amazing, actually. They gave us a present, and the present arrived today. And it was a very big present worth a tremendous amount of money. And I'm not going to tell you what that present is, but it was a very significant prize. And they gave it to us, and they said they were going to give it. So that meant one thing to me: we're dealing with the right people.
President Trump is not only dealing with the right people in Iran, he's dealing with the right people in the region, the ones who matter in this conflict. Pakistan, the Gulf states, Turkey, and back channels into Iran itself. Now look at who is not in that room, who he is not dealing with. The United Kingdom, the European Union, NATO. Not only are they not in the room,
But the British, the Europeans, and their insane green policies are literally out in the cold, and with them, their proxy war in Ukraine. But that's not what the mainstream media says. They say Trump backed down or blinked. That's the story they're selling. But what the media covers up, or what too much of the magosphere just doesn't get, is that Donald Trump has created a new diplomatic space where nations and their real economies are the currency of the realm, not imperial manipulation. I'm Susan Kokinda. I've spent decades studying the empire's great game and how financial control, managed conflict, and energy dependence are used to keep sovereign nations in line. I know what the map looks like when the system is losing. And right now it is losing. Here's what I'm going to cover today. First, who is at the table as Trump works to settle the Iran conflict and the new diplomatic architecture it represents. Second, who is not at the table, why Europe has reduced itself to irrelevance. And third, Ukraine, and why Zelensky's frantic maneuvering this week tells the whole story. So who is actually doing the diplomacy to resolve this conflict? The Wall Street Journal told the story this week, and the roster is pretty remarkable. Foreign ministers from Egypt, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and Pakistan gathered before dawn in Riyadh last week to work out a diplomatic off-ramp. Egyptian intelligence opened a direct channel to Iran's Revolutionary Guard. Turkey worked the phones between Iran and Egypt. Oman carried messages on maritime security. And the president confirmed it himself, first in these remarks to the press.
We have very much in mind our partners in the Middle East. As you know, a lot of them were surprisingly hit, and I was surprised to see it, and so was everyone else, but they're very much in mind in the discussions.
And then the president acknowledged Pakistan's role by reposting Prime Minister Sharif's statement, which said, subject to the concurrence by the United States and Iran, Pakistan stands ready and honored to be the host to facilitate meaningful and conclusive talks for a comprehensive settlement of the ongoing conflict. Now look at that roster. Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Turkey, the Gulf states. All of these countries are members of Trump's Board of Peace, the architecture he began building with the Abraham Accords, and now operating at full speed under the pressure of a shooting war, while still lining up billions in investment for rebuilding Gaza. And that pressure is doing something else entirely, something the media is completely ignoring. Iran and its proxies in neighboring countries are being isolated and defanged. In early March, the Lebanese government banned Hezbollah and told it to turn over its weapons. Then the Palestinian Authority publicly condemned Iran and sided with Saudi Arabia. Did you catch that? The Palestinian Authority condemning Iranian attacks on Gulf states and reaffirming solidarity with Saudi Arabia. And Hamas, Iran's own proxy in Gaza, is now seriously considering a disarmament proposal from Trump's Board of Peace. The entire axis of resistance, rhetorical edifice, has crumbled. Iran's military capacity is shattered, its supply lines to its proxies are severed, and the leverage is gone. Unlike decades of managed diplomacy, which kept the region in permanent war, Donald Trump is doing what no one has been able to do for a very simple reason. He doesn't play the imperial great game. He actually wants peace, built on genuine economic development. Now, notice who is not in that room. No British Foreign Secretary, no European Commission representative, no NATO quartet. The players who dominated Middle East diplomacy for decades are simply absent. And in terms of the military conflict itself, they are worse than absent. They've been AWOL, and the president has publicly called them out on it. So why are Europe and Britain irrelevant at this table? Because their own policies have collapsed their economies and have stripped them of any leverage. That was noted with not a little bit of irony by Kirill Dmitriev, the head of Russia's Sovereign Wealth Fund and one of Putin's chief interlocutors with the United States. Here's how he put it. Europe can finally enjoy the success of both its green and Russophobic agendas. No oil, no gas. This is not a taunt. That's a statement of physical fact, which even the Telegraph admitted with the headline, Europe facing fuel shortage within days, warns Shell boss. The EU built its entire post-Russia energy strategy on the assumption that Gulf LNG would always flow because the City of London had always managed those checkpoints, just enough to let Europe's green fantasy be semi-functional. That assumption is gone. And here's what makes this the empire's worst nightmare. It's not just that the strait is disrupted. It's that there are now two energy superpowers who have decisively broken from the green agenda and the rules-based order, and they're not shy about it. Here's Donald Trump this week posting the numbers on American dominance in fossil fuel production thanks to his policies. First, in terms of oil production, then in terms of natural gas production, again, all as a result of his policies. And here's Dmitriev posting Russia's dominance across all natural resources. Think about that. The United States and Russia simultaneously flexing their sovereign energy power in the same week, while Europe scrambles, no longer playing by free trade rules, no longer deferring to green energy mandates. Sovereign nations acting like sovereign nations. So what did Europe do this week when faced with all of this? They blinked. Twice. The European Union, which has been slow walking a $750 billion LNG deal with the United States for months, suddenly fast-tracked it for a vote this Thursday. And then, quietly, with almost no fanfare, Brussels pulled its scheduled April 15th vote to permanently ban Russian oil imports, citing current geopolitical developments. They haven't put that back on the agenda yet. What that means in plain English, they can no longer afford the ideology. Dmitriev said it best. Green agenda, Russophobia, no oil, no gas, no seat at the table. And nowhere is that loss of a seat at the table more visible than in the situation facing Ukraine. Because the patron Zelensky has always counted on is Europe, and in particular Britain. And Europe just spent this week proving it has nothing left to offer. The New York Times, of all places, captured Zelensky's predicament with this headline. Zelensky sends negotiators to the United States, hoping to revive peace talks. But catch the subhead. The Ukrainian president has said he has a very bad feeling about the effects of the Iran conflict on Ukraine's own war. The week before dispatching his team to Washington, though, Zelensky himself went to London to try and shore up support from his main sponsor. The Telegraph called it his Don't Forget About Me tour. While in London, Zelensky met with King Charles for an unprecedented fifth time and addressed the British Parliament in person for the second time. That's Zelensky working his British relationship as hard as he can because London is the patron he knows. But here's the problem. Britain has no energy cards left to play. Starmer can sign defense declarations and talk about not losing sight of Ukraine, but he cannot supply what Trump's New World configuration runs on, which is oil, gas, and physical economic leverage. He doesn't have it. Zelensky's very bad feeling is well-founded. The war in Iran is not a distraction from Ukraine's situation. It's a clarifying lens of a new strategic geometry. The energy and economic framework that sustained the British-directed proxy in Ukraine is being dismantled in real time. Europe can't fund it. Britain can't underwrite it. The United States has moved on to a much bigger stage of history. So look at the map. The players shaping the new Middle East are Pakistan, the Gulf states, Egypt, Turkey, sovereign nations engaging with the United States administration that deals in physical reality, not imperial management. Europe is screaming for the energy it spent years sabotaging its own access to. And Ukraine's most powerful patron is a country which is pretty much out of cards. They said Trump had no strategy. The map says otherwise. Iran did send Trump a present this week, and the old world order got nothing. Because this is a new world, being shaped by the principles of economic and political sovereignty and led by Donald Trump.
habit, so you ain't no friend of mine. It's a habit barking up your tree with my nine. Keep your bitch on a leash or at home, a knick-knack, paddywhack. Give the dog a bone, a raw dog. Fuck a law dog. Still handing out beatdowns with my sword off. Cause every now and then I gotta knuckle up, buckle up, chin checking, it's on, I reckon. It's the wild, wild west. Get your 40 and your blunt and your Glock and your bulletproof vest. Let me guess, everybody wanna test. Everybody running up, gonna get burned like cess. La-di-da-di, we fucking everybody. Boom, bitty, bye, sing the lullaby in the party. La-di-da-di, we fucking everybody. Boom, bitty, bye, sing the lullaby in the party. Boom, bitty, bye, bye. Put your ass on the floor and don't ask why. Boom, bitty, bye, bye. Boom, bitty, bye, bye. I put my Glock to your dome and you start to cry. Boom, bitty, bye, bye. Hey, any last prayers before you die? Boom, bitty, bye, bye. Rockabye, nigga, boom, bitty, bye, bye.
Yes, yes, y'all. Yo, the beat, y'all. Watch a punk slip and see the puto fall. I'm buck loading. Looking for the nigga who wanna cut me. Cause the nigga gets so funky. Fool, I'm the one from the big bad Cypress Hill clicker. Number one son of the funk freaker. Yes, yes, y'all. I'll be the one with the mad Buddha blast, y'all. Coming from the west, y'all. But I figure you cry like a bitch. Don't twitch, cause I just might pull the trigger. Now lay down, stay down. Don't move a muscle if you see your homeboy's brains on the ground. Don't
Tried to warn us niggas about you, but nobody would listen. Even began dissing. 2 albums later, you calling my crew.
all because you wanna be Cypress Q. No way, motherfucker.
Should've known you couldn't hang in the alley. Speaking on mama's little boy in the hood. Boom, bitty, bye, bye. Speaking on mama's little boy in the hood. Boom, bitty, bye, bye.
Let's go firstly to the Temu version of Wolverine, who is no longer with us. This is Yahya Hamidi, and he was a senior IRGC operative, an intelligence officer that was linked to covert operations against the American citizens and Israelis and other infidels. He has now gone to meet his 72 virgin goats. Moving away from Temu Wolverine, we also have General Behnam Rezai, who was the... Now, remember yesterday we reported that they killed the head of the IRGC Navy, the leader. Well, he was the deputy leader following yesterday's leader. He has also been killed after Ali Raza Tangsiri, who was taken out. So the Navy right now, I'm not really sure who they're answering to, but it's not going too well for them. We can also now go to Mr. Tomato Face. Mr. Tomato Face is Mohammed Mehdi Ahmadizadeh. That is a lot of Arab in one name. That's so much Arabic. Basij commander, IRGC Basij commander. He was in charge of the Hormuzgan province. So he was the head of the IRGC Basij unit, the people who kill ordinary civilians in Iran. In Hormuzgan, he was in charge, and Mr. Goat says he is dead. Moving on from Momo, or Mr. Tomato Face, we also have the Mr. I can't believe my wife is still cheating on me. Look at that face, you can tell his wife is still cheating on him. This is Ali Raza Dehghani Sanj. He was the head of the IRGC inspection, whatever that means. Don't know what they were inspecting. And the legal affairs. Oh, wow. The IRGC had a legal department as well. You have to do, if you're going to do terrorism, do it legally. And Mr. Goat is very impressed of the job that Ali Raza did. He has now also been killed in the city of Yazd. So goodbye. And we then also have the Mr. If I had a little bit more hair, I could have become a model. No. This is another Muhammad. So many of them. Muhammad Ali. Oh yeah, mixed it up. Khoda Bakhsh. Khoda Bakhsh literally means God forgives you. He was the leader, the command leader of the Air Defense Division of the IRGC in Esfahan. His job was literally to run the air defense system in the center of Iran. After failing to become a model, he also failed to defend the IRGC. He has also gone to meet his goats. We finally have the man who is very angry that after his death, they put him in a frame with girly flowers for some reason. This was the IRGC's senior leader as a part of the Tar Allah Corps Brigade. Why? Why do you have to come up with the weirdest names? His name was General Amir Mohammadi. Now, he's also gone to the afterlife, a little bit down south, where it's really, really hot with fire.
Mr. President. Thank you for doing the work of the free world and having the courage to step up and stop the Iranian terror regime from holding the world hostage. That's really what it is. And 27 days ago, Iran had a modern military. Never in recorded history has a nation's military been so quickly and effectively neutralized. Operation Epic Fury is not an endless war, It's a decisive campaign with clear objectives to destroy Iran's offensive military capabilities and ensure they never obtain a nuclear weapon. This is stuff for the history books. This is stuff for legacy. Mr. President, you are acting now to ensure future generations do not have to live under the threat of a nuclear-armed Iran. However, you wouldn't know it if you listened to the dishonest hate Trump media, as you referenced. The folks here in the room, these cameras, they have a choice. You're either informing the American people of the truth or you're not. Because I hear it from my people every day. Behind every headline you write, there's a helicopter crew in the air. And behind every news banner you write, there's a battalion on the move. And behind every fake news story, there's an F-35 pilot executing a dangerous mission. My message to the media is get it right. This actually isn't something new to me. I may be a young guy, Mr. President, but I'm not a rookie in this realm. In 2007, I helped lead the surge, the public fight for the Iraq surge. Stood and watched people stand in the Senate and declare the war is lost before it even started. Who was that? It was Harry Reid. That was the Democrats and the media working hand in glove. Back then it was 3 years into a war. Now we're 3 weeks into an operation. But see, unlike Iraq, this isn't a tie. This is not parity. This is not chaos. This is success, pure American success, on plan, and as the president said, ahead of pace. Over 10,000 enemy targets destroyed, over 140, I think now you're right, Mr. President, over 150 naval vessels sunk, underground facilities destroyed, their defense industrial base in shambles, and overnight, not only do they not have a Navy, Mr. President, they no longer have a Navy commander. IRGC's Navy commander was killed overnight in operation. So no Navy leader. Now that here's the thing about the media though, if President Trump had not acted, you'd be screaming, why not? And now that he has taken decisive action, you're asking, well, why did you? It's the same old tired playbook, TDS in your DNA. But the hardworking, God-fearing, patriotic Americans out there know better. And you alluded to this, President Obama, Mr. President. Here's a fact that you don't hear on your networks, but we know. Many of the Iranian military factories and bases that we're systematically destroying were paid for by the pallets of American cash that Barack Obama flew into Tehran under the Iran deal. You might call it an inconvenient truth. Iran took our money and turned it into weapons and bunkers and ammo. And now we're destroying those weapons and you're writing, Mr. President, that grievous wrong. And make no mistake, we had to act. And our objectives are clear. No nukes, no Navy, and a complete dismantling of their missile program and defense industrial base. And as Marco pointed out, that mission, and the VP as well, has not changed since day one. Yet, 2 days ago, they shot 2 failed missiles on a target 4,000 kilometers away. For years, they told the world that their missiles could only range 2 kilometers. Surprise. Yet again, Iran lied. And to the world, I say London is 4,000 kilometers from Iran. Washington, D.C. is 3,300 kilometers from Venezuela, another country President Trump did something about that partnered for a long time with Iran. So you're telling us that Iran is not a threat to the world or to the U.S. President Trump knows better. And here's what success actually looks like right now. You mentioned it, Mr. President. A-10 Warthogs, if you know them, you love them, and Apache helicopter gunships are flying strike missions inside Iranian airspace and throughout the Strait of Hormuz at will. See, you only send these slow, low-flying, close air support platforms when the enemy has no meaningful air defenses left. Their presence is proof that Iran's air defenses are gone. Their command and control is shattered, their top leaders hiding in underground bunkers, while their mid-level commanders are being crushed in the field, the morale of their fighters plummeting, and we see that disconnect daily. They're privately admitting, as you said, Mr. President, very heavy losses. We know that. President Trump has given us a clear mission. Our capabilities are only going up and Iran's are plummeting. We are here to win, and we're full speed ahead. So, Steve, we appreciate your efforts. We pray for a deal and we welcome a deal, and we have the ultimate deal maker to make it happen. But in the meantime, as I said yesterday, the Department of War will continue negotiating with bombs. War is negotiation by other means. And finally, I want to thank our incredible troops. Our pilots, crews, sailors, refuelers, air defenders, the absolute best of America, the real 1% of our country. This president, President Trump, has your back. And I know this cabinet prays for you every single day. And we ask the American people to do the same as they continue in this mission. God bless. Thank you.
Fox News alert, the clock's ticking, and the mullahs are up against it. Deal or no deal?
They now have the chance, that is Iran, to permanently abandon their nuclear ambitions and to chart a new path forward. We'll see if they want to do it. If they don't, we're their worst nightmare. In the meantime, we'll just keep blowing them away, unimpeded, unstopped. Well, there's not a thing they can do about it.
The Iranians asked Trump for another week before he turns out their lights. Trump said, why don't we make it 10 days? Our paratroopers are almost in position, as well as the USS Tripoli, as the U.S. Air Force penetrates deep and low into Iranian airspace.
A-10 Warthogs, if you know them, you love them, and Apache helicopter gunships are flying strike missions inside Iranian airspace and throughout the Strait of Hormuz at will. See, you only send these slow, low-flying, close air support platforms when the enemy has no meaningful air defenses left.
On top of that, the world's stealthiest supersonic jets in the air. The F-35 Lightning, and they never sleep. Here they are refueling midair in the middle of a combat mission. More B-1 bombers are taking off as the White House is eyeing a knockout punch if a deal isn't struck. More on that later. The commander-in-chief says Iran's negotiators are different and strange. But who cares? He's used to Schumer.
They want to make a deal. The reason they want to make a deal is they have been just beat to
Over 10,000 targets have been decimated since the beginning of Operation Epic Fury. 2/3 of their military-industrial complex is now gone. They won't be able to rearm. And the Israelis just got another scalp, Iran's top admiral. This is the guy who ordered the Strait shutdown, and now he's dead after an overnight strike on the fleet's headquarters. CENTCOM Commander Admiral Brad Cooper is ordering members of the Iranian Guard to immediately abandon their posts and return home to avoid death. Iran received the message. The president isn't bluffing. Don't make the same mistake twice. Here's Witkoff.
We have strong signs that this is a possibility, and if a deal happens, it will be great for the country of Iran, for the entire region, and the world at large. Iran is looking for an off-ramp following your powerful threat on Saturday. Your indications that you are willing to listen to peace proposals have been well received. Finally, we have told Iran one last thing. Don't miscalculate again.
Iranians are showing us their hand, and they're running out of cards. We haven't seen or heard from the cardboard Ayatollah. Poto was just on the 5, and I asked him if he was still in the closet. Did the CIA tell you that Ayatollah Jr.'s gay?
Well, they did say that, but I don't know if it was only them. I think a lot of people are saying that, which puts them off to a bad start in that particular country.
What's left of the regime's negotiating. For 3 weeks, they've been strangling the Strait, and Trump wanted to know if the people he was negotiating with actually had the juice. So to prove it, they gave us a little gift.
They said to show you the fact that we're real and solid and we're there. We're going to let you have 8 boats of oil, 8 boats, 8 big boats of oil. This was 2 days ago. And they'll sail up tomorrow. And actually, they then apologized for something they said, and they said, we're going to send 2 more boats. And it ended up being 10 boats.
10 boats of crude sailing right through. And Bessent says there's more on the way.
We are starting to see more and more movement in and out of the Gulf today. And this is more than yesterday. And this is the beginning. I am confident that shipping traffic will continue to increase on a daily basis, even before we secure the straits.
Last night on Primetime, General Jack Keane, said it's not a matter of if the Strait's open, it's a matter of when.
The reality is, on the Straits of Hormuz, we are going to take that by force and keep it open for as long as we have to be there to keep it open.
Keane says the military has been war planning, securing that strait for decades. We already popped it open in the 80s. This isn't new. And it's not just an open strait we want. We want the uranium, all of it. And that's the only condition we'd agree to a ceasefire. This is why Trump's still bombing during peace talks. The Iranians need to have a come to Allah moment.
The Iranians have the inalienable right to enrich. Then we heard they possessed enough 60% enriched material, 460 kilograms, to make 11 atomic bombs. Finally, we heard the following statement. They would not give up diplomatically what we could not win militarily.
The Iranians want to keep the uranium. They think it's their only leverage against us, the great Satan. Now, some of the country's hardliners are demanding their scientists fast-track a nuke. This is just according to reports. That's why the commander-in-chief wants to bring the country to its knees. Axios, reporting that the Pentagon is preparing for the final phase of this war. We're already prepared for ground operations deep inside of Iran to secure the underground uranium, but are hoping that large-scale strikes do the job. But now they're looking for one final blow, which could be Iran's crown jewel, Karg Island. Over 90% of their oil exports come from Karg. If we control Karg, we control the country. During peace talks, we're telling the Iranians that we need access to some of their oil, and that's not negotiable to ending the war. It's a strong condition, making Karg a prime target. The Iranians sense trouble. CNN's reporting they started mining the island and are preparing for guerrilla warfare. But the island's small. It's like half the size of Manhattan. And the Pentagon also has other options, like Larik Island. It serves as a toll booth into the strait. It sits on the narrowest part of the waterway. And smaller islands nearby, like Abu Musa, could also give us control over the choke point. The options are there. The president's going into the operating room.
What we had to do is get rid of the cancer. We had to cut out the cancer. The cancer was Iran with a nuclear weapon, and we've cut it out. Now we're going to finish it off. As we rebuild the greatest economy in history, a top priority must be to bring down the cost of living. And we were doing that.
The Arabs and the Jews want to go harder. The entire Middle East is telling us a ceasefire won't be enough. They want a normal neighbor, completely disarmed and denuclearized. The Europeans, on the other hand, no bueno.
I'm so disappointed in NATO because this was a test for NATO. This was a test. You can help us. You don't have to, but if you don't have, if you don't do that, we're going to remember. They have an expression, a great expression, never forget. You can never forget.
Iranian missiles can now reach every single European capital. We're systematically removing that threat. And besides the British, we expected a little more help from NATO. We were sure there for them when it came to Ukraine.
They shot 2 failed missiles on a target 4,000 kilometers away. For years, they told the world that their missiles could only range 2 kilometers. Surprise. Yet again, Iran lied. And to the world, I say London is 4,000 kilometers from Iran. So you're telling us that Iran is not a threat to the world or to the U.S.? President Trump knows better.
Iran's been waging terror for decades. The Europeans know it. Kamala knew it.
Which foreign country do you consider to be our greatest adversary?
I think there's an obvious one in mind, which is Iran. Iran has American blood on their hands, okay?
Obama knew it too, but he paid for their missiles to justify his little peace prize.
Many of the Iranian military factories and bases that we're systematically destroying were paid for by the pallets of American cash that Barack Obama flew into Tehran under the Iran deal. You might call it an inconvenient truth. Iran took our money and turned it into weapons and bunkers and ammo. And now we're destroying those weapons, and you're righting, Mr. President, that grievous wrong.
Obama's nuclear deal with Iran, he gave them billions of dollars, let them have as many missiles as they wanted, and we had to give them a heads up before inspections. And it sunsetted a few years later, so another president had to handle it. The Democrats funded the terror state that's shutting down the strait. So we smoked their leadership, annihilated the military, and are about to reopen the strait. And Democrats said, Iran's winning.
There is absolutely no plan. The administration clearly can't even understand why they're in this war, what their strategy is to get out of it.
You're saying the U.S. is losing this war?
As of right now, I think we are.
The Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, has a message for Moulton and the media.
The folks here in the room, these cameras, they have a choice. You're either informing the American people of the truth or you're not. Because I hear it from my people every day. Behind every headline you write, there's a helicopter crew in the air. And behind every news banner you write, there's a battalion on the move. And behind every fake news story, there's an F-35 pilot executing a dangerous mission. My message to the media is get it right.
Liga.
At Thursday's cabinet meeting, President Trump issued a warning to NATO and to the entire transatlantic order. Listen carefully.
That's why I'm so disappointed in NATO, because this was a test for NATO. This was a test. You can help us. You don't have to, but if you don't do that, we're going to remember. Just remember this in a number of months from now. Remember my statements. They have an expression, a great expression. Never forget. Can never forget.
Never forget. That is not a complaint. That is a verdict, and not just on NATO. That is a verdict on the entire system that has run the global economy for the last 40 years. The media says the Iran war has alienated Trump's coalition, trashed his economic agenda, and handed our enemies a gift. They're wrong. The Iran war is not mainly a Middle East story. It is a financial story. The systematic, deliberate decapitation of the British imperial financial system. And it happened this week. And here's what we're covering. First, what really happened at the G7 meeting this week and why it's a funeral for a dead order. Second, how the United States just seized control of global energy and replaced the city of London in the process. And third, the coming meeting with China, and a shared tradition that the British Empire spent 150 years trying to bury. Let's dig in. Let's be clear about what the Iran war actually is before we talk about the G7. For 2 decades, Washington tried every combination of sanctions and diplomacy to stop the Islamic Republic's nuclear advance. Iran moved from zero enrichment to 60%, enough for multiple nuclear weapons. Its missile stockpile grew and spread to proxies from Lebanon to Iraq to Yemen. They lied about possessing missiles with a 4,000-kilometer range. We know that because they have shot them off in this war. The old approach failed totally. Trump's answer was different. He demanded rollback, an end to enrichment, limits on the missile program, the dismantling of the proxy network. Tehran refused. The result was a shift from bargaining to attrition. As one Iranian analyst put it this week, negotiation and war are not opposites in this situation. They are successive phases of the same campaign. Now, what did Europe do when the United States finally acted? They said we were violating international law, despite the fact that they need natural gas and oil from the Gulf, while the United States does not. And at the G7 meeting, they finally agreed, after much deliberation, to help police the Strait of Hormuz after hostilities end, after the fighting stops, only when it is safe. Think about what that means. Europe's great contribution to the security of the world's most critical energy choke point is to show up for the cleanup. Marco Rubio had told them exactly what he and the president thought of this on his way to the meeting. He reminded them that the United States has been constantly asked to help in a war, namely Ukraine. And when the United States has a need, he said, they didn't get positive responses. And then Friday, at the Saudi Investment Forum in Florida, President Trump delivered the final verdict. Listen to him.
But I think a tremendous mistake was when NATO just wasn't there. They just weren't there. It's going to make a lot of money for the United States because we spend hundreds of billions of dollars a year on NATO, hundreds of protecting them. And we would have always been there for them. But now, based on their actions, I guess we don't have to be, do we?
They weren't there for us, so we no longer have to be there for them. That is the funeral oration for the transatlantic order. Not a threat, a verdict. NATO failed its test. The City of London's Praetorian Guard is finished as strategic partners, and Trump just said so publicly at a major international forum in front of the world. He noted we'll be saving a lot of money. The OECD confirmed it this week in numbers. The worst economic downgrade of any nation in the entire G20 went to the United Kingdom, the home of the City of London. Did you catch that? The empire that built its global power on controlling the world's commodity markets is now the weakest economy in the G7. The funeral is already underway. But here's where it gets really interesting. Because while Europe was busy writing its post-hostilities commitment, Trump was already building the world that comes next, without them. Here is what the media completely missed this week. While the G7 was negotiating its toothless post-war cleanup role, Scott Bessent was sitting in the cabinet meeting Thursday, describing what the United States has already done. Listen carefully.
We've taken actions to ensure oil supplies stranded at sea are made available to the global market. Your bold actions like the Development Finance Corporation's Maritime Reinsurance Program in conjunction with Central Command will soon provide shippers through the Gulf region with a level of security we had never seen before.
Lloyd's of London, the 300-year-old institution at the heart of the City of London's control of global maritime trade, has been replaced. Not threatened, not competed with, replaced. The United States Development Finance Corporation, working directly with the U.S. military's Central Command, will become the insurer of record for shipping through the Gulf. The empire's financial weapon, control of insurance, control of risk, control of who gets to trade and on what terms, control of prices, has been taken out of London's hands. And then Friday, Trump made that official with a single joke at the Saudi forum that was not a joke at all. Let's listen.
We're negotiating now, and it'd be great if we could do something, but they have to open it up. They have to open up the Strait of Hormuz.
The Strait of Trump. Let that sink in. He's not just taking military control of the most critical energy choke point on the planet, he is renaming it. That is a declaration of sovereign dominion, backed by the U.S. Navy, backed by Gulf Arab allies who have watched Iran attack their ports, their infrastructure, and their tankers for a month and have drawn their own conclusions about who they want running security in their neighborhood. What does it mean to control the Strait of Hormuz? It means controlling the flow of roughly 20% of the world's seaborne oil. It means that 84% of the crude moving through that strait, heading for China, India, Japan, South Korea, moves on American terms, with American insurance under American security guarantees. That is not the petrodollar system. That is something entirely new. That is the United States becoming the dominant energy guarantor of the entire Asian economy, not through financial manipulation centered in London, but through physical control and physical trade between sovereign nation states. And simultaneously at home, capital is flooding out of Wall Street speculation and into the American physical economy. Last Monday, Promethean Action's Brian Lance documented this in great detail on his Substack. Energy, mining, manufacturing, nuclear power, defense, all of it is beginning to prosper and flow. McKinsey, the confidential advisor to the global financial elite, published a report this month quietly admitting that commodity markets are being, in their words, quote, rebalanced beyond purely market-based logic. That is McKinsey's antiseptic way of saying the City of London's speculative pricing system is finished. The president sees our economic future in this hemisphere and in a direct trade with Russia, China, Japan, and India, not in the dead transatlantic empire. The Strait of Trump is not a punchline, it is a policy. Now let's talk about the emerging story, because this story will find its next chapter in Beijing when the president visits there on May 14th and 15th. The analysts stuck in the pre-2024 world see this as an economic Cold War between two great powers and predict a major clash. That framing is a British imperial trap designed to keep the two largest physical economies in the world at each other's throats while the City of London referees. On Friday, Iran blocked the passage of two Chinese-bound vessels through the Strait of Hormuz. Iran is now charging millions in tolls for safe passage, even for China, its largest oil customer. On Friday, at the Future Investment Forum, Trump was asked which nations were leading the great economic transformation now underway in the world. Here is what he said.
But right now, the United States, as the future king of Saudi Arabia said, we're the hottest country anywhere in the world. I must say, I respect China greatly because it's amazing that with a system that in theory shouldn't work, but you look at China, how well they do, how well they manufacture. I mean, they manufacture cars so many that they actually have a contest for who can manufacture the least cars because they have so many cars. You have to have great respect for China for the job they do. Like them or not like them, you have to respect them.
The United States and China, two industrial and manufacturing superpowers with something big in common. There is a figure claimed as a founding hero by both the Chinese Communist Party on the mainland and the Kuomintang in Taiwan. His name is Sun Yat-sen. Sun Yat-sen was an American system economist. His 1922 work, The Industrial Development of China, called explicitly for massive state-assisted industrial investment modeled on the American system, the tradition of Hamilton, of Lincoln, of Henry Carey. He studied that tradition. He embraced it. And crucially, he rejected the British free trade model as exactly what it was, a tool of imperial exploitation designed to keep developing nations dependent and underdeveloped. Sound familiar? Trump recognizes that both nations can claim a shared tradition going back over a century. The British imperial system spent 150 years trying to keep America and China from recognizing this common ground. What you are watching this week, the Strait of Trump, the Besant insurance program, the G7 funeral, is that recognition beginning to dawn. Donald Trump told the Saudi Investment Forum that America is not bound by old rules, that we invent the future by gathering the best minds and talents and letting them create. That's what all the analysts keep missing because they are trapped in the past. They're pessimists, and most of them lack the creativity the president is exercising. They keep analyzing the present as if it were Bush, the Iraq War, and the reign of Dick Cheney and the neocons, or similar constructs. It's not that. It's something entirely new, which rescued our republic from what we now see in the UK and Europe, the dying and still dangerous outbursts of a failed empire. The clock is now ticking on the midterms, and we have a very big job ahead of us, educating the population away from the Psy War to comprehend the wondrous world which can lie ahead.
The spectacle of fearsome acts. That's what preserves the order of things.
Shall we play a game?
President Trump warns of serious retaliation after 2 U.S. Army soldiers and 1 U.S. interpreter were killed.
I'll hit you so hard in the face you'll be shitting your teeth.
If you fuck around with us, if you do something bad to us, we are going to do things to you that have never been done before.
I will rain down an ungodly fucking firestorm upon you. I am talking scorched earth, motherfucker!
Take a look.